Fans of the Realm of Hopeful Horrors series have given me a ton of great ideas for public domain characters and stories that I could work into this series, which itself is a series that I'm making public domain. So anyone watching or listening that wants to write their own stories in the Realm of Hopeful Horrors or adapt lore or characters from it into their own stuff is free to do so. And one suggestion that I saw coming up a bunch was the Wizard of Oz. I started looking into the differences between the books and the movies because currently only the books are in the public domain, and doing that gave me some great ideas for a story revolving around the Wicked Witch of the West, like in Wicked. Except again, I'm using the book version of her, so she's not green, she has an eye patch, and she uses a golden cap to summon her flying monkeys. I think this is going to be a great fit into the realm. Please give me even more suggestions for public domain stuff I could use, and if you're new here and you find yourself enjoying this, I highly recommend subscribing because I do have more Realm of Hopeful Horrors coming. But now let's get into it, shall we? Let's go! Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Wanda Weston awoke like she'd been struck by lightning. A thunderous crashing sound startled her, making her open her eyes and spring to her feet in one swift move. To find she was not in her bed. She wasn't anywhere she recognized. She'd fallen asleep with the eye patch Esther had given her on, which sometimes seemed to make her have weird dreams, but she knew this wasn't that. It was far too real. Around her were twisted, malformed trees with gray bark and white leaves. The air was cold, but also thick, and didn't flow smoothly as Wanda started panting in confusion. She looked around, desperate to make sense of what was going on. She found no answers, save for what may have caused the crash. Through the trees, she saw a clearing where there was a house that had pieces falling off of it. Unsure of what else to do, she approached. And as she got through the trees, she saw that the house was destroyed from the bottom up, as if it had just fallen out of the sky. More alarming still, when she moved around to the front door, she realized she recognized this house, and seeing it again made her furious. Worse still, Wanda saw a pair of mangled legs sticking out from under the house. Well, it didn't make any sense. Somehow she knew instantly those were the legs of her sister, Esther, a sister she'd lost 5 years ago. The door to the brutalized house suddenly swung open, making Wanda jump again. Stepping out came a figure Wanda knew all too well, though she looked different. It was Dorothy Gale, a figure Wanda had stalked online and once in person ever since her sister's death. This twisted version of her, though, had skin that was dark purple with glowing veins, her eyes were neon green, and on her feet were Esther's tattered silver running shoes that Wanda had always been sure Dorothy had taken. With a familiar rage building in her, Wanda stepped closer, ready to scream at this distorted Dorothy. But the second she took one step closer, Dorothy's body blinked out of existence. Wanda saw something move in her peripheral and whipped around. Dorothy had appeared 100 feet or so away, down a tired, pale, yellow brick road that Wanda didn't remember being there a moment ago. The irksome girl was happily skipping away down the road. Wanda still had no idea what was going on, but she knew those shoes when she saw them. Even if it had been 5 years, the memory of them was burned in her mind, and she was not letting them go, no matter what twisted version of Dorothy carried them. Wherever this place was, Wanda bet there was nobody around to enforce Dorothy's restraining order against Wanda. Wanda took a running start towards Dorothy, but with every step, Dorothy's body jumped around to different locations, sometimes getting slightly closer, but most often moving farther down the road into the distance, headed towards a pass through some cornfields. Wanda picked up her pace and tried sprinting faster and faster, ignoring the pain in her bare feet, letting her fury fuel her, as she'd done so many times before. That is, until a golden object appeared, floating in the air right in her path. She slowed to a stop, panting and staring at the hovering golden crown with a runestone stuck in the front. A disembodied voice suddenly echoed around her.
I'm very sorry you've come to this place, but as unreasonable as this reality can be, it can also help you find exactly what it is you've been looking for so long. This rune of summoning will help you. I hope. Please, just be open to the lessons here, Wanda. They're not always what they seem.
Wanda tried to call out to the voice for more answers and explanation, but it simply fell silent. Still seething with rage, Wanda snatched the crown out of the air and put it on her head. As soon as she did, she felt a sort of knowing, as if the crown had instantly communicated to her how it worked.
Get me to Dorothy now!
In puffs of red smoke, 2 winged baboons with viciously long teeth appeared in the air before her. Wanda almost tried to reverse the command. She considered turning and running from them, but before she could, they each snatched one of her arms, digging their fingers into her flesh, and they tore her off the ground. They flew higher and higher, and as painful as the grip was, any time it felt to slightly loosen, Wanda grew terrified as she looked down to the brick road below. A fall from this height wouldn't kill her, but she imagined it would cause breaks and pains that would make her wish it had. The monkeys shrieked in her ears as they flew, and every second made Wanda want to reconsider her travel method, until she finally caught sight of Dorothy again. Now that Wanda wasn't running, the girl was no longer teleporting around, but when Dorothy saw Wanda coming, she turned off the road and ran into the cornfield. Wanda thought she might be trying to hide, and she angrily grinned at the girl's stupidity. That is, until Dorothy stopped right next to a strung-up Scarecrow. She touched the dangling mannequin and brought it to life. Its body grew, vines lashed up from the dirt into its form, making it larger. Red eyes illuminated under its sack-sewn mask, and when it stepped down from its perch, it was twice the size of a normal man. And it looked up at Wanda with a twisted, gleeful grin. It raised its hands towards her and vines lashed out of it, coming right for her. She yelled, "Drop! Get us down!" But the baboons took her first word too seriously and dropped to Wanda. She was over the cornfield now instead of the road, but still 20 feet up, so when her legs hit the ground, they hit hard. Hard enough that they'd be of no use to her in trying to run now. She groaned and shook in pain, failing to stand as the 2 baboons were torn to shreds by the vines in the air above her. Wanda couldn't see much through the tall corn stalks around her, but she could hear lumbering footsteps approaching. She rolled onto her stomach, about to call for another summon with her crown, when through the foliage, like a silver beacon, she could see a glint of the silver shoes. Anger took over her better judgment, and Wanda started crawling towards Dorothy.
You're giving them back! You're finally giving them back, you...
Wanda was forced to stop talking as a sharp vine stabbed straight down through her back, pinning her into the ground. She wheezed and choked up blood as it lifted her up into the air to face the grinning Scarecrow. She panted, her fury shifting purely to terror. She used the ocean of adrenaline surging through her to try and tear the vines away so she could fall free. But before she could, more vines slowly creeped out of the Scarecrow's eyes and mouth, moving towards her. They barely inched out at first. Then, after a pause, they shot straight towards her eyes, neck, and head. Then blackness. Once again, Wanda awoke and leapt to her feet in terror, only to find all her injuries were gone. She was on the balcony of a castle with towers that were floating and shifting around her. She was clearly still in this unreasonable reality, but at least that meant she still had a chance to get her sister's shoes. Whatever this place was, no matter how horrifying, if Wanda really finally had a chance to get those shoes back from Dorothy, she was going to do it for Esther. Or at least she claimed it was for Esther.
Get me to Dorothy, Wanda snarled at her crown, and with something other than those shrieking apes.
They were monkeys, not apes, but the crown clearly understood. Appearing above her in a huge swarm were 2-inch-long black hornets.
Is it too late to switch back to the apes, actually?
It seemed it was, as the swarm of hornets flew down and surrounded her body, lifting her off the castle balcony, soaring her across the forests and mountains beneath, and even the mountains above. Along with a castle with floating towers, there were also floating mountains. When Wanda tilted her head, the sky itself seemed to shift between hues of purple and green. When she got over the horrible crawling feeling of insects all over her, Wanda actually started to enjoy the incredible sensation of soaring through the air. That is, until the thoughts of Dorothy flicked back across her mind, and she latched onto those, letting her rage build once more. It had been 4 years since Wanda had gone to Dorothy's home in a slightly inebriated state, and demanded that she finally return her deceased sister's stolen shoes. Wanda remembered the rage that spat out of her as she cried,
"You killed her by taking them! You could at least have the decency to admit it and give them back!"
The seemingly fake confusion on Dorothy's face still made Wanda's teeth grind. She was sure she'd taken them. Dorothy just didn't want to admit it because she knew Esther's car accident never would have happened if Esther hadn't been going to confront Dorothy about taking them. The familiar feeling of anger fueling her to action surged through Wanda as the Hornets lowered her towards a forest. This brick road Dorothy had followed winded on for miles, heading through a poppy field in the distance, then eventually to what looked like some kind of stone city. Wanda had no intention of following Dorothy farther along it, though. She was stopping Dorothy here and now. As the Hornets floated Wanda down through the upper branches of some trees, she came to a village mixed into the woods. There, with the road cutting through the town center, Wanda saw Dorothy, seeming to chat with a man with gray skin, warts covering his flesh, and an axe slung over his shoulder. The town was full of short people scattering about with similar complexions. "Faster! Come on, get me to her now!" Wanda muttered angrily, trying to not be heard. But it was too late. Dorothy spotted Wanda coming down and immediately pressed a hand against the man with whom she was chatting. He instantly started to shake, and his eyes glowed red, like the Scarecrow before him. His flesh shifted to a dull metallic material, and he warped into a form like a 20-foot-tall automaton of a man, spewing black smog out of every hole and crack in his hide. His axe had grown along with him. Dorothy skipped along to his other side down the road again as he raised his weapon and swung. The Hornets just barely zipped Wanda back out of the way. They lowered her to the ground and she yelled, "Give me something that can actually fight this thing! I'm not doing this again!" Suddenly, bursting out of the woods came a pack of wolves as tall as Wanda herself. They growled and snarled and barked with rage that felt to be echoing Wanda's own. "Tear him apart! Leave Dorothy for me!" The wolves charged at the towering Tin Man, but in his first swipe alone he sliced two of the hounds in half, sending neon green blood splashing across Wanda's body. One of the wolves got close enough to snatch his leg, attempting to yank it from under him, but he drove a fist down, slamming the mutt's head into the dirt, and leaving it there. The wolves were not faring well. The brute chopped limbs, kicked, and hurled them around, smashing them through the buildings of the town, sending the villagers scrambling away in terror. There wasn't a good opening to get past him, but Wanda could see Dorothy pleasantly sauntering away down the road. She wasn't getting away again. Wanda sprinted to the far left of the Tin Man, ducking under the body of a wolf smacked towards her. She got just past the automaton and thought he'd been distracted enough for her to get clear, when she heard another clean slice, and quickly realized it wasn't a wolf who'd been cut. The top half of her body fell away from the lower half, and her chin slammed into the brick ground. With her vision quickly fading, the last thing she saw was Dorothy, skipping backwards away with a grin, daintily waving her fingers. Everything went black, then, for a third time, Wanda rapidly arose, but this time it was out of rage and determination. She had appeared on the stony ground next to a bubbling lake of black slime. Oddly, there was a man there sitting in a beach chair sketching on what looked like an iPad. He looked over at her and just nodded pleasantly. He then looked her up and down, and a strange sequence of lights flashed through his eyes on his distorted Picasso painting-like face. Then, he started drawing even faster. "Can you help me, or are you like those useless wolves?" His mouth moved as if he was talking in response, but all she heard was a high-pitched ringing sound. "Useless," she snarled, shaking her head. Turning her attention to her crown, she said, "Get me to Dorothy again, I don't care how." Once more, the flying baboons appeared and carried her off towards her target. Quick interruption to say that if you enjoy my storytelling and art, you might want to check out some of my illustrated novels I have available. Maybe in this case, most specifically, you'd enjoy Fear of the Demon Hunters, since that has horror story elements to it. Or you might enjoy my coloring books if you want to color some of my art yourself. Links to my Amazon and Blurb bookstores are in the description, but now, back into the story. It took nearly an hour of flying before Wanda started to see the stone city again in the distance. The closer she got, the more furious she became, thinking of what this twisted version of Dorothy would throw at her next. As much as she wanted to hear the real Dorothy admit that Esther's death was her fault, she was almost glad this was clearly some mutant, otherworld version of her. It meant when she finally got her hands on her, she could let out all the rage and fury that had been built up in her for so long in any way she wanted. Her younger sister had been her best friend. Wanda had lost one of her eyes as a young child, and despite feeling insecure about wearing a patch over it, Esther had given her one and made her feel as though it were a cool, distinguishing feature. Wanda had actually been able to feel kind of cool for having one, thanks to her optimistic little sister's encouragement. Esther had never had Wanda's temper, which Wanda considered to be her sense of justice. When Wanda was in her first year of university, Esther had called her to chat, as she did once a week, and mentioned that she was pretty sure this girl, Dorothy, had stolen her favorite silver running shoes after field hockey practice. She said she wasn't totally certain it was her, but Esther wasn't one to throw around accusations like that. Wanda had gotten Esther those shoes for her birthday, so she immediately became livid and told Esther she had to demand the girl return them. Esther said she'd already asked Dorothy, and she said she hadn't taken them, but that just made Wanda even more furious. While on the phone, Wanda quickly used social media to figure out where Dorothy lived, gave Esther the address, and told her she had to go to the girl's house and demand the shoes back, that she had to get better at standing up for herself now that Wanda was off at university. Esther was hesitant, but didn't like to disappoint Wanda, so she agreed to go. But she never made it to Esther's house. Her tire burst on the drive, sending the car over the edge of a bridge into the river below. That phone call had been the last time Wanda had ever gotten to speak to her sister, and she blamed Dorothy for that. Every time a memory of Esther came up now, it was tainted by Wanda's hatred for Dorothy. She'd carried that hatred ever since, and it was both energizing and emotionally exhausting, and she was finally going to let it out today, no matter what Dorothy tried to throw at her next. Wanda had spent the flight thinking about what she knew about Dorothy from the times Wanda had fueled her own fury, scrolling through the girl's social media feeds. She'd posted multiple times about how she hated spiders. That was perfect. Wanda could see Dorothy just past the red poppy field, approaching the stone city. Wanda stayed silent, wanting to sneak up on the girl this time. But then her infuriating baboons started shrieking once again, alerting the girl to turn.
Fly lower! If you morons drop me again, I'm not breaking anything this time!
They did as ordered, swooping just over the field of flowers. She was within 30 feet of Dorothy when the girl started sprinting towards her.
Good, yeah, just you and me, just...
But then Dorothy dropped to the ground on the edge of the poppy field and put her hands to the flowers. Suddenly, in a wave, the flowers in front of Dorothy shot up a cloud of yellow spores. It was too late to slow down or fly over them. The spores shot right into Wanda's eye and nose and mouth. The monkeys dropped her and she rolled along the dirt. Every breath she took in made her woozy. Her vision was spinning, but she refused to let whatever this was stop her. She ignored the exhaustion and got to her feet, continuing to stumble her way in the direction of where she'd last seen Dorothy.
You're not getting away. Not getting away.
Wanda was so tired. Mentally, physically, she felt sick, but she kept going and going, until finally she could see the silhouette of a figure ahead through the spores. Wanda burst through the wall of them to see Dorothy, only 10 feet away. But she was standing next to a lion. Thankfully, the creature was shaking and cowering. It bit Dorothy's blue checkered dress and tried to pull her away like it wanted to flee. It didn't seem like it would be much help to her. Wanda was ready to get her hands around Dorothy's throat, but just in case the girl pulled anything else, Wanda muttered,
Send me spiders, big ones.
As ordered, suddenly scuttling and leaping down from the nearest stone buildings of the fossilized-looking city came big black arachnids. Dorothy saw them and pressed a hand onto the lion's forehead. The pattern repeated. This ally of Dorothy's grew into a beast, now looking horrified of itself and of the charging spiders. But a scared animal is just as likely to attack as it is to flee. Whimpering and shaking, it drove its teeth into the closest spider. At least it was on Dorothy's other side. There was nothing between Wanda and her target now. But she raised her foot and noticed Dorothy's body starting to glow, like she was going to start teleporting away again.
Hey, you stupid apes! Bring Dorothy to me this time!
Dazed and flailing, but still flying, the monkeys burst out of the spores and flew towards the girl. She didn't even resist. They grabbed her and dragged her right next to Wanda, dropping her to her knees. Finally, Wanda raised her hand and swung her fist, smashing it into Dorothy's face. She hit her again and again and again. But the girl's pleasant expression didn't wane. Wanda tried hitting harder and harder, but still nothing. She wrapped her hands around her throat and pinned her to the ground, squeezing so hard she was hurting her own hands. Still no reaction. Wanda screamed into the girl's face. "You're giving back those stupid shoes! You're finally giving them back!" Then, for the first time, the girl spoke.
"That's not what you want, though. You want to keep chasing them, and you know it."
Wanda froze, but then immediately tried to convince herself that was nonsense and just kept furiously squeezing, then slamming her own forehead into the girl's nose, to no effect. She started trying to think of anything she could ask for from her crown that could finally actually hurt Dorothy, when a set of fangs chomped through Wanda's torso. She was torn free from Dorothy and was hurled back into the cloud of poppy spores. She tried to get up, soaking the ground in blood as she moved, and more spores were sucked into her nose, making her dizzier. She was desperate to not let go of the anger fueling her so she could get up. But soon a massive paw stomped onto her chest, and the fangs found her again. This time, when she awoke, she didn't leap up. She just sat up, back on the balcony of the shifting towers. The physical injuries were gone, but Wanda was still so completely and utterly exhausted. And she realized this wasn't a new feeling. She'd gotten energy from her anger so often over the years, but never allowed herself to accept the emotional exhaustion that came with it. While she had no interest in admitting that twisted Dorothy had anything of use to say, a thought quietly slipped in because of her words. What if I did let go of chasing those shoes? Immediately, she felt the heartbreak hiding behind the rage. Guilt hit her like a truck, feeling that even if Dorothy had taken the shoes, she was no more the cause of Esther's death than Wanda was for telling Esther she had to go to her home and confront Dorothy. Ultimately, there was nobody to blame. It was an accident, and that thought let the floodgates open. For the first time since Esther had died, Wanda cried. She cried and cried for so long and so hard that she was afraid it may never stop. And yet, a small part of her felt such utter and complete relief. Anger and obsession and blame had all been just a toxic coping mechanism. Without her realizing it, her mind had decided that if she had someone to focus her fury on, she'd never have to deal with the immense grief of losing her best friend. But doing that had just made the grief build up more and more and more, until finally she was letting it all pour out. Wanda didn't know how long she cried, but at a certain point in it, something beautiful happened. Beyond the memory and acceptance of the painful loss, the good memories started coming back too, and there were so many of them, no longer tainted by hatred. The tears kept flowing, but now they were more of a somber happiness than exclusively being because of bottled up pain. Even while crying, Wanda actually felt good, in a way she hadn't in so long. Even as she started to notice that her own tears were starting to merge with her body, and her own form began to melt away. It seemed like it should have scared her, but it actually felt really nice. As she melted more and more, her senses faded to a calming blackness. Soon there was nothing but her awareness and peace. When her senses did return, she was home, lying in her bed with a tear-stained face. Another tear then slipped down her cheek and settled in the dimple of her slight smile as the gentle thought sunk in that, in unreasonable reality, she had truly found what she'd been looking for so long. If you enjoyed this, there's at least 3 other episodes of the Realm of Hopeful Horrors out that you could check out. Or if you're watching this farther in the future, there's probably even more episodes out. I'll link the whole playlist in the cards and the description. Also, if you have created anything in the Realm of Hopeful Horrors, you might want to consider sharing it in the PopCross Community tab, where other people who watch this series, and even I, can see it. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course we're ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and that's the idea that if you gave a bunch of story events to a bunch of different storytellers, they would all write very different stories around those events. One might make a tragedy, one might make a comedy, one might make something really inspiring and uplifting, using the negative events in a story to inspire characters to improve and do better and push forward. In that same way, your life is a sequence of events that your mind has written into a story about you. And if that story is a negative one that just makes you feel terrible about life, remember you can consciously choose to take those events and rewrite the story into something that inspires you to live better and improve every day. So maybe consider now, is it worth trying to rewrite the story you've written about your life? I hope that's an inspiring idea. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday.